All right, everybody. I've got 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting of the Common Council to order. Roll call, please.
Seth,
Here.
Andrew,
Here.
Todd Kirking,
Here.
Emma,
Here.
Todd Spaeth will not be here. Cindy,
Here.
John,
Here.
Crystal,
Here.
Steve,
Here.
and Justin.
Here. We'll do Pledge of Allegiance. All right. Item number 2, approval of the December 10th, 2024 regular council minutes.
And this is Crystal. I'll move approval.
You got a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Item number 3, council announcements. Any member of the council have anything they'd like to? Go ahead.
I'd like to give a shout out to the Viroqua Fire Department for their first responders. They've been helped my mother more than once, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Chad and the guys. So just want to let you guys know about it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
This is Emma. Actually, this just reminded me, I believe it was on Sunday night, there was a post on Facebook of someone who was struggling, and the sheriff department and the police got lots of calls. I just want to shout out to like everybody in Viroqua. By the time I called, which was like 2 minutes after the person posted that they were suicidal, they'd already received tons of calls. So that was a good response from everybody in the community.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll move on to item number 4, which is the first period for public comment. Any members of the public wish to make a comment? Now would be the time. Anybody online?
Yeah, I want to make a comment.
Sure. Please say your. Oh, Tim?
Yeah,
Hey.
yeah. I can
Just
see.
me, Justin.
Yeah.
I wanted to throw something out that I know we talked about in the past, but possibility of the city recording and posting meetings or live streaming meetings. I've been asking the county to do that for a while, and the county's finally doing it, posting it with their minutes and so forth. I don't know if you can put that on a future agenda sometime, maybe for a discussion.
Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
Anybody else? Hearing none, we will move on to item number 5, which is a public hearing on the rate change proposal for the shared ride taxi service. With that, we will open the public hearing.
Okay, this is something that has been, for those that may not know, but our shared ride taxi is both with the city of Viroqua and the city of Westby, and we do have a couple of representatives here from the city of Westby as well. We have been in discussions in regards to ways in which we can make up for some of the shortfalls that our budgets are taking with the less amounts that we're receiving in grant funding. And one of the options that we did discuss actually way back in January of 2023, we had kind of discussed adding or making these changes, but we never went through with the public hearings. Working with the state on these grants and things, there is a process. We actually have to take it to a public hearing for discussion on a proposal, which it's kind of backwards because if we don't know what we want to ask for, it's kind of hard to take it to a public hearing and say, well, what do you want to do? So what I did is I basically took what we talked about in 2023 and throwing that out here for this public hearing. So our current rates in Viroqua and Westby right now are 2 different rates on some things. So we're kind of hoping to get it more consistent because it's helpful for our provider. It's helpful to make sure that people that are starting out in Viroqua going to Westby, they're not paying a different rate than Westby coming to Viroqua and vice versa. So consistency is kind of the key on here. So their current rates in Viroqua for an adult is $2.75. Westby is currently at $3. Senior and disabled for both is at $1.75. Students in Viroqua are $1.75. Westby is at $2. And in between Viroqua and Westby is $6. So what was proposed back in 2023 is to raise things $1 on the Viroqua side, and I believe it was 75 cents on Westby side to make it so that it was going to be consistent. So what that would propose would be the adults would be $375 and senior and disabled would be at $250. Students would be at $275, and in between Viroqua and Westby would be at $7. So that's kind of what we are proposing. It's kind of back on what we had talked about in 2023. I don't know, Justin, if you want, I know Westby had it at their Common Council as well. I don't know if you want to let them speak as to what happened at their meeting. The city of Viroqua was actually the one that makes the ultimate decision on this because we are the provider between the two because they don't have the population enough to take it over, if that makes sense. So we had a combined one. And so when I talked to the state, the city of Viroqua was actually the only one that has to make this decision. But we're collaborating with the city of Westby. We want to make sure everybody's on board as well as because their constituents are going to be affected by this as well. So.
Yeah. If either one of you have anything you'd like to.
Right, Danny Helgerson, Mayor for the City of Westby. Like was stated, yeah, we talked about this way back 23 and stuff like that. I still don't remember how over the years we got that quarter difference, but it happened. It's definitely not that, we want to make it any harder on anybody. It's just, if anybody understands the subsidized program, the subsidies go away over time. Our ridership, it goes up, but it's not going to go up by huge amounts. I mean, we only have so many residents that use it. But I think the way the price structure is set with the discount for senior disabled and stuff like that, I think is fair. The big thing with this is, as the subsidies go away, the city ends up picking up the cost. And looking back at ridership and stuff, it got to the point to where the city was paying as much as the rider, if not more, and that's kind of hard for me to justify that we're paying, the rider's not even splitting the cost with us. So I don't think these are big enough increases to stop anybody from using the program or put them in a really bad situation. Like I said, the way it is set up as far as the division of a standard adult or a disabled person or senior or something like that, I think makes the difference where it's more affordable for those that need it. But yeah, this is what we agreed. It wasn't unanimous, but our council did agree to these increases, and it's just a way that we can keep the program going because we all have tight budgets and it adds up over time. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thanks, Danny.
Hi, I'm Sue Castenson, an alder in Westby, and I believe I'm the reason we were not unanimous. And my reasoning was just for the seniors and disabled for that ride between Viroqua and Westby. I just did not want to see that be the same as it is for more abled and not as senior. Wanted to keep their prices down. That was my main concern. And we didn't have a way to divide that out in our voting. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. I have a little history and on Westby's, why Westby's was higher. When Westby was starting their component of this program, they were starting from no ridership. So they wanted to have a little higher rate to try to be able to recoup that local share, if you will. And as ridership grew and that shrunk, there was not a real reason to increase it earlier on. The funding percentage used to be about 74% state funds, and then the ridership revenue would come into the equation, and then the difference between revenue and grant funds was always made up by the local taxing municipality. Well, now I think it's 54% is what the state's funding percentage is. So that's went down nearly 20% over the last 20 years. And it's worth noting that since 1994, when the Viroqua cab started here in Viroqua, that there's been a 50-cent increase in fare. So, and there wasn't a real need to, you know, as when the percentages were up in the 60s, it was still enough to where the local share wasn't substantial enough. You know, the city was contributing and everything, but now that it's down in the 50s, it really does need to catch up. And then the meetings we've had talked about, you know, looking forward, trying to do more regular inflationary increases rather than not doing anything and then having to do $1, which is significant. But there's, for all the reasons that were mentioned here, it needs to come up some. So you have something, Seth?
Well, it just obviously as we cross bridges and me being new to this, I always want to get some insight. Is there a spreadsheet available somewhere that just as an idea of how many people utilize the taxi service in either Viroqua and Westby and how big this affects with a increase?
We get quarterly statistics reports from our provider. I haven't taken and divvied out the amounts for that to that point, but one of the things that we did, I believe it was at our last council meeting, was to increase those agency fees, which is another revenue stream. So that should be another bigger thing to help us, that we wouldn't have to do another one of these rate increases for a while.
And I think that was a part of my question, is what we discussed 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was the city share, not necessarily
Right.
this is individual rider share. No.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Which the more ridership revenue the system generates, that lowers the city share. So, Steve?
Sorry, what was the thing we discussed like 2 months ago or a month ago? It was
It was the agency fees.
Does that affect Westby as well, or is that just here? in
Yes.
Viroqua? Okay.
Yes,
So it's shared as well.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason it has to come through here is, again, because we are the hierarchy on the agency because of the fact that our population is higher, and so all the admin is done through the city of Viroqua. So both of them don't have to make that decision, that the city of Viroqua could make that decision. However, with it being a collaborative effort, it's good to know that Westby is on board, and we have been meeting, and we don't want to do this, but it's something that at some point we feel it is necessary.
State legislature sets the population threshold for communities that are allowed to independently apply for shared ride taxi funding or 5311 funding. And I don't know where it is today. I know it was at 4,500 for a number of years, and it went down to 4. And I think they've been trying to lower that some to give smaller communities an opportunity to get on board. But unfortunately, communities Westby size just don't qualify for that. So they can partner with a neighboring municipality, and then they can have the service. And that's why this relationship exists, which is a tremendous benefit for both communities. A lot of folks come both ways, and it is a good.
I guess kind of on that both ways note, is that between Viroqua and Westby a round trip fee, or is that one
It's one way.
direction? Okay.
And we're looking at this to become effective on February 1st, just to give our provider enough time to, because there are cards and things that a lot of people will buy, you know, for the stamp cards, or I don't know exactly what you call them, but enough for them to get those printed with the new rates and things.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we can close the public hearing and we can go into the agenda item. So no other questions? All right, we'll go ahead and we'll close the.
Anybody online like to contribute
Sorry.
to the public hearing at this time? I think you're good, man.
All right. Now we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and we'll move on to, let me get back to the right page here. Item number 6, which is discussion with possible action on rate change for shared ride taxi service.
I had a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Cindy.
I wondered about the student rate. Is that for high school, 18 and under, or is it college? Or
It is for high school and down. So it's not a college rate.
okay. And then the Rockwell Westby, how about the idea of keeping the senior at 6 between towns? Is that just cause confusion, or what's your thinking on that?
It, as Lori had mentioned, it can be a management, from a ride tracking perspective, but I don't know that it couldn't be done.
I mean, we do it for all the other things.
Right. Those are, so the $3, $1.75, $2, or the $3.75, $2.50, $2.75 are ridership categories. The between communities is an additional fare. It's not a category. It's not a type. It's a category. So I don't know that I've never seen any other systems have a different fare for something like that.
How
That
about
doesn't mean
doing
that-
a round trip fare then? Is that done very often? Do people often? I would think they pretty much always do a round trip.
Sometimes, but it depends on when they do it. So from a revenue tracking standpoint, if I do a round trip and I pay you and then he takes me back later, now I have to tell him he has to communicate with Cindy, and because each individual driver has to have a specific driver's log and account for all the revenue and the trips that they provided during their shift. And if there's revenue that was collected outside of that, that creates an issue with the audit. You have to be able to point back to that revenue because they audit each individual driver's log, the DOT does, to verify that every dollar of revenue that should have been collected on that particular driver's log is collected. I always tell people there's a lot of better ways you can do this, but the state won't let you. I shouldn't say it that way.
Mayor,
That's
can you
not
give us
exactly
any
right.
idea of where that $7 sits comparative to other communities? I think at a previous conversation, you had sort of let us know that where we're at isn't.
So you're talking about the agency fee. The between communities, the $7 isn't a common fee because there's
because
not
they-
very many communities that have systems
thank
that
you.
go in between each other.
Okay.
So I don't think there is another one that I can point to that has that. The agency fare is. I don't know.
And I believe back in 2023, when we discussed this, I don't think we talked about the between Viroqua and Westby. I put that out there as an additional $1. Right now, it's currently $6 for both. I did not put that out there. I only did it as a $1 increase because you guys had talked about $1 across the board. So if that's something you don't want to change, you don't have to. It's just that I went with the $1 increase for every category that we have. So just to be clear, that wasn't something you guys had talked about earlier.
When's the last time that dollar amount was changed for between Viroqua and Westby? Was that also 1994 since that's been changed?
In our meeting, I'd looked it up. When did Westby begin? It was 2000 and something.
It used to be 5, didn't it?
Huh?
Wasn't it 5 for a while?
It could have been. I
think I took it.
yeah. So if I recall that being at $5 at one point, but I can't. Yeah, go ahead, Danny. I don't have documentation to prove that.
Yeah, it's been many years since this was looked at and stuff. And that's where, as we were talking earlier, some of this was talked about back in 23 even and stuff, just trying to keep up with the cost of things and stuff. I just, as the conversation went on, I just wanted to point out a couple of things. First place, nobody likes increasing the rates on anybody, and that's where this is something I wish we would have looked at earlier in time, was agency fees and stuff like that. Kind of the hope with that is that the agency fees being increased to comparable with everybody else that does this. we could actually went higher. But we could have went $10 easily. We're talking 8. And that way, if we really need to, that gives us an opening there. I think the one thing I wanted to highlight was the fact that we're hoping with increases like that, we can put off any other increase for a long time again. Nobody wants to do away with the service. I think it's a very valuable thing. I think we've got people now that use it, especially the seniors, that count on it now. Maybe they had a car, they don't need it anymore. This time of year, they don't have to go out and heat up their car and scrape snow off and all that kind of stuff. So I'm definitely not against the program. It's just when the dollar amount gets up there, we all try to stay in our budgets and stuff. So hopefully with the agency part increase, and then this small increase that was talked about going on 2 years ago now, nothing gets cheaper. We all know that. So, but the reason for the agency fee thing I really wanted to highlight was maybe then we can relieve some of the stress and keep the price like this for a while for the seniors and the disabled. Okay.
Thanks, Ian. Other questions?
Maybe just a comment again is
Mhm.
my thought. And with Westby being on the side of it, it's probably a majority of the Westby individuals that are taking the trip to Viroqua than Westby people, or Viroqua to Westby. I don't know if that probably isn't a
Quarterlies.
50-50 trade. I would think they're coming our way more. I
I honestly don't know if
probably
it's broken
doesn't
down
really
that
play
way.
into it.
Historically, it's always kind of been, there's a lot of people from here go to Westby. There's some
Okay.
good shopping, there's folks
Yeah.
like to go up to the Hansons up
Borgans.
there,
Go
and do some
visit.
grocery
Yeah,
shopping. They go to
Borgans.
Borgans. There's, Westby's got, and they've, the clinic
that
up
it
there,
matters
there's
in
some
the
good
play,
stuff going
but-
on up there. So I know that people use it both ways.
Okay.
Some school kids, I think that, use it back and forth and stuff. So,
So just one thing to reiterate, and I think Danny did a good job bringing it up, and it is, the mayor noted that the cost is going to get borne by somebody, and that's what his concern is. Doesn't want to raise rates, but the cost is going to get borne by somebody. So even if we don't charge the rider more, the person who's directly benefiting the most, it will end up still being a cost to the taxpayers in some way, shape, or form. And so you're a little bit trying to figure out here who to put the burden on, right? And again, from an administrator standpoint and knowing what our budget target is for this, we do need to do some sort of increase in order to make this happen. We went into the budget season knowing that we had that conversation back in 2023 and just needed to implement. Again, as Lori has stated, the other things were sort of already talked about. This is a little bit new, and as far as I see it, you're somewhere between 75 cents to $1 increase across the board for all of your stuff. That might be the area to try to stick with, is somewhere between 75 cents and $1, just to be consistent across all your costs. But
Then make it $6.50 to go to Viroqua? I'm just trying to, if I understand what you're saying.
that would only be 50 cents.
Well, but if they're always round trips. They're pretty much all.
they're not always. I mean, sometimes folks come and, you know what I
Just
mean?
a
Like,
thought.
you certainly can. And that's, I think the important part here is this is what's proposed, but the council does get to set the rate. So you all get to,
So Viroqua adult to adult is $1. So it's $2.75 to $3.75, and then everything else is 75 cents, right? $1.75 to $2.50 is 75, $2 to $2.75 is 75. So again, I think Lori said like being consistent would be nice, applying the burden equally across all rates. So it's not, so everybody has to share into it a little bit, and trying to keep the rates simple for administrative ease is something to think about as well. But just a few thoughts.
And I understand your two-way concern on that and that is that added $2 increase for the round trip, but that's still that much travel that's happening with fuel and back and forth, so it needs to probably get covered consistently, so, but I know what you're thinking.
Anything else? No, it is. It's always hard to raise rates. And a lot of the communities that I work with outside of here, rate increases have been standard since 2020. It's been just constant. Almost every community we operate in has had rate increases, and it's not uncommon. The price of the vehicles to provide the service went from 30 to 70,000. Gas went from $2 to 3 to, you know what I mean? But so did people's home expenses and their groceries and, everything's up. Go ahead, Danny. Sorry.
Comment one more time. We're guessing early 2000s the last time we really looked at a rate increase. And I mean, everybody understands. I mean, it's not just like gas prices, stuff like that. I mean, the cab drivers, they're going to want wage increases over all these years. The cost of vehicles definitely hasn't went down any, so I think to be able to maintain it at these prices, I think we're doing very, very good with that. If you go back, well, we're looking like 20 years and we haven't changed anything. $1 doesn't seem like it's terrible. Granted, like I said before, if the agency thing keeps us down, we can maybe stay there for, I don't know about another 20, but
Well,
but,
hopefully the state
for
continues to
a long time.
renews the value and that they see in the program and can start putting some more money back into it. That would be
Yeah.
a perfect world,
Yeah.
right? So our elected officials in Madison need to understand the value of these programs and make sure that they stop reducing the state's contribution, which then puts the burden on the municipality.
And
So
that's something, I mean, I can try to help with the league and stuff like that is, transportation aid in general and stuff is something we definitely need increased, but we can't fix that here.
right.
Right. It'd be nice, we could.
Right.
But, yeah, just again, I mean, just to remind people, yeah, we're looking at 20 years, $1. I don't think we're out of line. I mean, I really don't want to make it that difficult on anybody, but
I will also comment that I have not received anything negative or positive in regards to this. And this has been out there for quite some time now. And I would have thought if there would have been a public outcry that I would have probably heard. And I have not.
That's what I was more interested in hearing, coming tonight was the fact, I mean, I know this was posted and everything like that. So if it was a really, major thing to the residents that use this, I think we would have heard a lot. But, I think it's understandable. Thanks again.
Thank you.
I would move we go for $1 across the board.
Todd, I'll second it.
It
Right,
has to
now-
be-
I think we just want to adopt the new proposed fee schedule. Yes?
Is that what you want to do, John?
Okay.
They're,
So we adapt the new fee schedule then, it's fine.
Todd, I'll second that.
Other discussion?
I think we want to do a
Yeah,
roll
I'll-
call on this one, just because I know the state will probably want to know that.
Yes. We'll do a roll.
Okay. Todd,
Aye.
Emma,
Hi.
Cindy. Aye. John,
Aye.
Crystal. Aye. Steve,
Hi.
Seth,
I,
and Andrew.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you for all that. Thank you guys for
Thank you,
coming and talking. So, All right, we'll move on to item number 7, which is appointment of Todd Spaeth to 6-year term to the Airport Commission expiring 9/1/2030. And I didn't know Todd wasn't going to be here today. So
I say, yeah, can you make it be on there
Right.
longer?
he did say that he would take the appointment. So
Lifetime term.
that's how that works. So
This is Crystal. I would move the appointment of Todd Spaeth to the 6-year term for the Airport Commission expiring September 1st of 2030.
Steve, I'll second.
got a motion and a second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, item number 8, reappointment of Wyatt Oldham, Lynn Kronschnabel, Jared Getz, and Eric Bankus to the tree board for 3-year terms.
I will let you know that at the last tree board meeting, we haven't met since was it 2020? I think. So
Right.
we finally had one last week. Wyatt and Eric were there. Lynn and Jared were not. So I don't have their technical approval that they want to stay on it. So if you wanted to approve this in contingents on us
Yeah.
discussing it with them, that would be fine. I know they were planning on coming to the meeting, so I think they're interested. I just didn't get them the next phase.
Wyatt and Eric, who were there, did say that they would continue to stay on though.
Mhm.
Correct.
So it would just be contingent on Lynn and Jared saying yes.
That's right. So, need a motion?
Miss Cindy, I make a motion that, you want to do it?
No.
Oh, okay. That we reappoint Wyatt, Lynn, Jared, and Eric based on Lynn and Jared wanting it.
Todd, I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Moving on right along. Item number 9, review and approval of pay request number 5 for the fire station project.
Okay, everybody, this was included as part of your packet. I apologize for the poor quality. I know some of the numbers on the back half of the sheet as it was signed off by multiple parties and then rescanned came through very tough to read. Chad will do us a favor and sort of share a little bit about, what this pay request includes and any conversations that he had with Levi that he wants to pass on. So this pay request overall is for $733,706.37. This would be pay request number 5. And Chad, is there anything you want to share?
Not per se. If you want to go down to that second sheet that kind of breaks it down, you might have to spin it to
You
a
can't really,
quarter turn it.
the one you
quarter.
can't really see at all.
Yeah. If I remember right, a bigger chunk of this is more for the steel. We finally got our first bill from the steel erector.
Went the wrong way.
You're getting there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it similar to the last ones. I really don't have anything super exciting to talk about. There's no there was a couple questions that I had, and we went through those and worked through it with Keller to make sure that I was thinking correctly. And as Nate stated, Levi reviewed it too, and we discussed, and everything's on track and everything makes sense. We talked a lot about the percentages. I think I mentioned that last meeting or whatever, and we kind of went through that and how that works and whatever. So, but yeah, unless you have any questions, there's nothing out of the ordinary. There wasn't anything crazy to talk about. So, yeah, absolutely. So,
Thanks, Chad.
yep.
Make a motion, we approve pay request number 5 for the fire station project.
This is Crystal. I'll second.
I got a motion and a second. Any questions?
One thing I did want to know, and this is a conversation, sorry, I'm going to try to rewrite the ship here. Lori and I had a conversation about the funding for this. So if everybody will recall, we took out a loan for over 3.3 million for this project. That money has been sitting in an investment account being monitored by Ellers in order to earn us about 4.5% on those dollars, which is fantastic because that's just money that goes to help build our cash pool. The longer we keep that money in that investment, the better. And so Lori and I had a conversation today with Ellers about where we sit in terms of cash right now. Does it make sense to pull it out? All of it, not all of the money that's in there because there's over $2 million, but does it make sense to pull the full 730 out? Do we do half? Do we do $250,000? We're trying to make sure we understand that. And because we have a little bit of time on the pay request before we have to turn it in, Laura and I will plan on, we would request that you allow us to hold the check so that we can identify exactly how that's going to look. Because that's a big chunk of money coming out. And we just want to make sure we have a good plan. So it won't be for another 2 weeks. It will certainly be for less than a week while we sort of get our bearings. We have priorities right in front of us this week. And so we just need a little bit of time. So as long as that is understood with the group that, yes, we can cut the check, but we're going to just probably delay it turning over for that reason because it's to the benefit of the city. And that we're well within our contracted obligation on when they need to receive payment after submitting a pay request. We're very good about turning these over, but we're not going to turn most over so fast that it's at our disadvantage.
I would amend my motion to reflect that.
I don't think we have
I'm
to.
okay with it.
No,
too.
I think the motion is fine and it's just unless somebody feels the need to, but any other questions? Roll call, please.
Emma,
Aye. Oh, I'm here. Yes, yes. Thank you. Sorry, my mic took forever to get on.
you voted aye on that? You
Yes.
Voted yes? Okay. Cindy,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
and Todd.
Aye.
All right. Item number 10, approval of pay application number 3 for Main Street Contract 1-2024.
All right, let me just get everything moving here. Okay. And I thought I had this all set up and ready to go. Now I have it all set up and ready. Oh man, and I left it in here, so I can't zoom it in very well. Let's see. Whoa. Not so much. Maybe you have, oh, you may not be able to do that.
You just need to minimize you need to just maximize your program screen.
Program screen here.
Top right corner next to the X.
It's because it's in Outlook.
Okay.
If you are willing to wait until it loads in Adobe, I will be in a much better spot here. There we go. Okay. All right, so this is our third pay request for the Main Street project. Obviously, the Main Street project hasn't had a lot happening in the last month because of cold weather. A lot of this actually happened since the last pay request, but what wasn't included was the electrical contractor's work. So any of the traffic signal and the bases. So that's why this pay request due this application is $60,660.50 because it is just focused on that part. I guess the only thing that's really notable is that we ended up having an additional concrete base than what we had originally thought, and that was because, oops, nope, not this one. Excuse me, that's the next one. So yeah, so this is pretty straightforward. It's just a bunch of electrical bases and the RRFB signals. So it was brought forward from the Public Works Committee, so looking for a motion to approve this pay request number 3.
I'll make a motion, we approve pay request number 3 for Main Street Contract 1-2024.
Todd will second it.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Cindy?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Crystal?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Seth?
Aye.
Andrew?
AJ, are you there?
Aye.
Todd?
Aye.
And Emma?
Aye.
All right, item number 11, approval of pay application number 3 for Decker Street Improvement Contract 2.
All right, it's a very similar story for the situation as well. It is predominantly just electrical contractor carryover that didn't make it onto the last pay request. What I was mentioning before is actually applies in this situation, which is that we ended up having an extra pull box. What happened was the original situation was that it was going to be in the curb gutter on Main Street in that corner, which is just a bad idea. And so we ended up having them move it into the sidewalk area. So that's why you see pull boxes, the original quantity at 1, and basically this is 2. So that was an extra $2,123, but I would say money well spent. We don't want to deal with that in the future. Plows catch it and big trucks driving over it. So this pay request is the total amount due is that $18,925.01.
What happened to the 3 cents that was on the other one?
Yes. We decided we were going to short them 2 pennies. It's a rounding thing with the retainage. Yeah. Yes. Some people really are worried about that.
Some in this room even. All right, any questions? Look for a motion.
And this is Crystal. I would move approval for the pay application number 3 for Decker Street Improvement Contract 2 in the amount of $18,925.01.
Todd, I'll second it.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
John?
Aye.
Crystal?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Seth?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Todd?
Aye.
Emma?
Aye.
And Cindy?
Aye.
All right. Move on to item number 12, approval of pay application number 2 for Viroqua Sewer Project 2024.
Okay, this one is our work that's still happening, actually. They thankfully decided not to work in this weather, but they are still working. And this project is what we call our Sewer Project 2024, but it's actually 3 projects, 1 larger one with 2 smaller ones put together. And so we saw a lot of that earlier on in the year with Railroad Avenue, and then they moved over by the school on West Broadway. They did a short stretch. They're basically getting themselves to as far as they can with certain projects to make the most advantage for the spring. So like, for example, on Broadway, we stopped short of the highway, County B, because we just didn't want to open that up before, like we could pave it right away. And so right now they're working on Chicago Avenue. So we've had a number of closures there to accommodate changing the storm sewer, which actually both works in favor of our project as well as the development of the Hanson Farm. So there's basically pieces all throughout that are cleaning up work that they've done up to this date, which was just the beginning of the new year. So the total current due is that $96,970.11. And I will say that one notable thing in that is that we did pay stored materials previously. So as they use those materials, they deduct it from the total. So if you did see a line item at the very bottom, there's lots of lines, and you see there's a negative amount. That's why there's a negative amount, because every time they use that material, they start taking it off the stored material total. So essentially, we end up with a net 0 in the end for stored materials.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah. Questions? We'd be looking for a motion.
This is Steve. I make a motion we approve the pay application for Number 2 for Viroqua Sewer Projects 2024 in the amount of $96,970.11.
This is Crystal. I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Crystal,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Todd,
Aye.
Emma,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
and John.
Aye.
All right. Item number 13, discussion with possible action on task order 24-02 for GIS services with Strand Associates.
Okay, so we have a GIS system that is used throughout the city. And originally it was created by the city staff and Strand and Associates. They actually housed our GIS system on their servers. But Esri, the program that we use for the GIS, evolved about 3 years ago, and they have everything cloud-based now. So essentially, most of our fees come through Esri. We pay them out. Every department who uses it pays their sort of rental fee, I guess, for the space or user fee. But we can't always do all of the things we need to do on that GIS because it is quite complicated. And so that's where Strand comes in. So they still do help us create things. So like the most recent example would be the service line inventory, the interactive map. So we gave them the information and inputted it, but they helped us create that map and that layer. And so this is where we were basically, it's renewing the ability for us to use services without having to have a new contract every time. This is for an estimated fee of $5,000. So what happened even last year, they're like, oh, we hit our mark. And I was like, great, because it's a new year. So it ended up working out, and this would be for a contract period until 2027. And this expense is not necessarily a general fund expense. It's just whoever uses it. So sometimes it would come from my engineering GIS category or the water and sewer.
Is this is it 5,000 per year?
No, it's
Or for the
basically
contract?
allowing us to use their services up to that amount. And then if we got to that point, we'd have to come back. It's kind of giving them a ceiling.
Just
But
over the
we
course-
are the ones that authorize, like I call. I'm basically the only one that ever calls and say, which actually reminds me, you just recently asked me about a map that needs to get updated. So that would be something I would do. I would call up Strand and say, hey, you need to make that change to was it our ward map or our zoning map? I can't remember.
It's our ward map
Yeah,
with the
okay.
ward. the
I will
ward
get
line.
on that. I just remembered when I looked at it. But yeah, those are the kinds of things they do for us.
Thanks, Sarah. Questions? Not really. Look for a motion.
This is Crystal, and I would move that we approve payment for a task order number 2402 for GIS services with Strand and Associates. And that would be $5,000 until the year 2027.
Cindy, a second.
Motion and second. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Steve,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Todd,
Aye.
Emma,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Crystal.
Aye.
All right. Item number 14, discussion with possible action on change order for Main Street project to address a milestone date.
Okay, I think this is the last one. This is a change order that doesn't cost any money per se. So essentially, the Main Street contract had an effective date where the full contract needed to be completed by May 31st, 2025. But that was primarily related to any of the traffic control and electrical work. The reason that it extended that far was just we knew they were going to have a hard time acquiring the new pole and the new light heads and things like that. 22 weeks was their first estimate of how long it took from when we ordered it. So that was why that timeline was there. But within the contract, there were milestone dates, and the milestone dates were the ones that we were looking at to get things done for basically the whole rest of the project. And obviously, they weren't able to continue working with the concrete work because of the weather. They did some bases and a little bit of other electrical work, but they didn't want to be doing those larger sections. So they do have, our contract was modeled after the DOT contracts, and the DOT contracts have provision for winter suspension. And essentially it goes from November 15th to March 30th. Is it March 30th or March 31st? It'll be on here, March 31st. And so that's sort of like their natural allowance for when they say it's acceptable to have winter suspension. So therefore, because our milestone date was actually December 3rd, there was this gap in between the milestone date completion, because we wanted them to be able to work as long as they could with the weather, and the winter suspension, because they did make a winter suspension request. So what this means, in short, is that there are 11 days that we would count as saying, okay, you lost 11 days before December 31st. Did I say December 3rd? The full contract ended December 31st. Their schedule said December 3rd, excuse me. So you had 11 days left that was on your schedule that you weren't able to finish. And so essentially what we're saying is that, okay, once winter suspension is finished, which would either be the DOT winter suspension date, which is March 31st, or if they decide the weather is good enough and they want to get in there, they can. However, if they do go ahead of that March 31st date, that starts the clock ticking. They don't get to say, oh, we had a really good day and we're going to count that one day. And then, oh, no, it got cold, so we had to stop. So it would be, if they get out there, they've got 11 days to finish. What happens in 11 days? Because it is probably likely that they are not going to finish the concrete work in 11 days. There's just so much sequencing that happens in this project that they can't pour it all at once. Now, we could close the entire one side of Main Street, but that wouldn't work for our businesses or citizens, right? So we stagger the different sections. And then there's also like the work itself. Not all of the bump out can be poured in one pour. So at that point, then we get into liquidated damages, right? And so liquidated damages are supposed to make us whole. They are not necessarily a penalty for the contractor, meaning if we don't incur additional expenses or damages, we don't necessarily get to just charge them the amount, which is the amount is $1,000 a day. So we certainly have, and will be, if you remember, we extended the contract for ISG to do the construction inspection. So we do have some expenses, and they're going to be running up against basically not getting paid for whatever that amount is. And that will come in the future. But this is, since the date has lapsed, we need to tell them what the situation is. And this is us telling them what the situation is. They did agree to this. So they have signed off on this. So it's essentially up to us to sign off on it. So that is the situation ahead. So once we start, it's going to be 11 calendar days. If they wait till March 31st, it's going to be April 11th is the day in which they're going to be out of their time, so to speak, for their milestone.
Thank you, Sarah. Questions?
Essentially, yeah, the simple side of it. I mean, this is like George had to go through this and everybody had to get their legal ease in here, but it's essentially like you're not gaining much. You don't have an indefinite amount of time now because we've lapsed that time frame. We have a set amount of time. So
I'll make a motion. We approve change order number 1. Is that
this
enough?
is change order number 1.
Yeah.
This is Seth. I second it.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Yeah, I think we don't need a roll call. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks,
Thank
Sarah.
No. Yeah. No. Okay. Okay. Good. Item number 15, update on city website and timeline for launch.
Everybody else just need a second to sort of switch gears off of. Okay, everybody. Do we lose somebody? Oh, we lost Lori. That's fine. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, we are very close here to the end of our current website and to the start of our new website. So let's talk about timelines. We sort of made an executive decision that we will be launching the new website on Thursday. Our current website is on its last legs. It has been on its last legs for a very long time. There's many parts of our current website that just aren't being, what's the word I'm looking for, supported anymore, technically, by some of the groups that they have. And so therefore it's not supposed to be out there in the internet anymore. And so we had a little bit of a scare right before Christmas about an update that it was going to mandate that we do. And we asked our old IT person who still kind of helps us with the website, what will this do? And he said, well, it might be fine, but it also might kill it. And so my response was, okay, let's not do that then, especially right before Christmas, because that doesn't seem like a problem I want to have to deal with on Christmas Day. So it kind of was one of those problems that we just like left alone and kind of took care of itself. And we've been able to update the website, but it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, it's time. And so we spoke to Revise and said, even if everything's not perfect with the website, it's certainly going to be better than what we're right now. And we kind of made the executive decision, like, let's lock in for Thursday, January 16th, and let's get the show on the road. So if you don't want to do that based on the current state of the new website, we can always back out. But I would highly recommend that we continue pressing forward. Trina, myself, Sarah have been in the website somewhat daily, just continuing to update it. One of the things that I will note is that the old website was just really vacant of a lot of content because it was so broken. So we didn't put a lot of time into adding a lot of things to it simply because it in some ways didn't feel like it was worth it. And so really we're building content up that was just missing, that we weren't adding to it over the course of 2, 3, 4 years, right? So with that, Trina, anything else?
I just want to thank Nate for what he's done. And he's not going to like this, but he has been just in it every day, all day. And so what you're going, I don't know if you're sharing it tonight or not,
Yeah,
but
we'll go through it.
yeah, I just want to say most of this is him.
Yeah.
It's been really impressive. And I'm really proud of how this has turned out.
Yeah. Thanks, Trina. I appreciate the kind words. Other people, all the chiefs, Kale have all been, very responsive and turning in additional content or information as we need them. So it's been a good effort by the group. And so I'll go ahead and throw this on screen. We'll just do a quick walkthrough, make sure you guys feel comfortable about where we're at. Again, it's important to note that we're still, if we can get this thing launched with a B grade, I'm going to feel really good about it. There's so much functionality here that we've yet to explore, that this is really just tip of the icebergs. And as folks who are still learning the site, everything's just not going to look quite the way we want it right away. It's going to take time to build it and know exactly how we want it to look. But this is going to be the main page. So when you go to Viroqua, eventually we'll switch to a new domain name. But for right now, we're still ViroquaWisconsin.com. We have to switch websites first, and then we'll worry about switching to the domain name. Didn't realize that you couldn't do it at the same time. That's what I was hoping that we would be able to do, but it turns out that's absolutely what you cannot do, because you run into this chicken and the egg thing with them trying to talk to each other. So this is the main page, 3 main sections. This is sort of your hero image. We can update these pictures as we want. Some of our quick links here, and then news and announcements. You will note that this is broken right now. All of a sudden, just this morning, as we were sort of adding some things, this is made up, of course. Trina was adding something to it. Yeah, there's been a bear problem. And, this is still hasn't been updated. I was just testing some things out. But as soon as Trina went in to actually add full content, it sort of broke it. And so we've had conversations with Revise about getting this fixed up. I don't know why all of a sudden of days that this section, which has been fine for weeks and weeks now, decided to go down. But this is where we can put any news and announcements. So comprehensive plan meetings or updates regarding any projects that we're working on, and literally anything and everything. We can just make sure if we want to do a reminder about noxious weeds and making sure we're mowing grass or taking care of our properties or whatever it may be. We always have the need to try to communicate and highlight things, and this is the section for it. Down below, here's our meetings and events calendar. I've gone ahead and populated all of the meetings events that we have currently scheduled within the city of Viroqua. And so this is just sort of the main look on it. Any meeting, especially for a meeting like tonight, you can just come in and click on it. It will come up with this nice little pop-up that will show you physically where the meeting's at. This Common Council gives you a general understanding about when the meetings take place regularly. And then if you want to go explore, hey, I want to pull the agenda for that meeting, it will take you to this page, which will allow you to find any agenda for any meeting that is scheduled within the city of Viroqua. When you look at this page, what's really important to note is that this is the editor's page. I can't, because I'm in it so much, I've really struggled to be able to access the page without being logged in as the editor. And so you see all these buttons that say new, a lot of these things here that are editor's functions, those won't appear to your normal user. So it looks a heck of a lot messier here in a lot of the pages than what it will look like for the user. But you can come and you know, check out, hey, I want to check out the agenda. You can pull the agenda up right away. You can come in and you know, look at the packet, which we have up. And one of the things that one of our comment that was made about public is you can also come in here and load videos, link them to our YouTube channel, things like that. Once the minutes are approved, we can put minutes here. And so this will just be a nice repository for all of our content, which right now is very limited because I think we're only doing maybe council minutes and things like that. The other thing we'll have is, you know, bounce around to some of the different things. Here's all of our committees and commissions. And you can sort of see, again, so it looks busy because there's a lot more buttons, but you can see all of our committees, commissions, our boards, anything that we have entities for. And I can zoom in a little bit if that's helpful for folks. So if I want to go in and say, hey, who's on the library board? I can open that up, expand it, learn more. Maybe there's a link to an additional page because maybe there's a link to the library's website itself. Maybe there's a link to the Friends of the Library page. You know, however far we want to go with it, we can go with it. I actually did something like that for the Tourism Commission, where if you're interested in learning more about the Tourism Commission's Special Events Grant Program, you can just buzz on over there and get to it that way and learn more about things like that. So again, I'm not going to go too far, but this is our special events page. If you want to go link over to the chamber to see the actual special events calendar, because again, it's very important that we don't have ownership over the event calendar, because then we kind of have to pick and choose who gets to go on. There's a lot of upkeep to that. And frankly, some sticky decision-making that can, as a government, can be problematic for us. So allowing the chamber to have reins on the event calendar is really important. Really, our portion thereof is if someone needs a special event permit or wants to explore the grant, they can go through us. Some other cool things, if you know, all of our development opportunities that we want to have for people to take a look at, we've never really had a good place for people to go. It's like, hey, where can we build? We're interested. We want to invest in Viroqua. Well, now anything we have, we can go ahead and throw out there. I included Main Street Apartments for the time being, just because I'd like to showcase that one. But otherwise, you can look at all the different properties that are sort of out and about and available. If you want to come in, you can click on this one. This is a bad example because it's kind of formatted improperly right now, which is something we have with Revised, but we can include a location, pictures of the site. You can access the brochure that we created, zoning standards, things like that. It's really a lot more robust than what we're used to working with. The sort of the nicer pages getting here with some of the services. You know, here's all of our departments. You can explore everything from, you know, if you want to check out building and zoning, there's a nice page here where you can sort of learn all this stuff. Again, we're still trying to figure out how to organize content in the most efficient way. But if you want to contact Daisy, there's her contact information right there, along with phone numbers, email addresses. If you want to access the GIS map, anything like that, everything's just much more fluid to get to. Of course, links to other pages. And the last place I'll kind of show, so here's the clerk's treasurer page, where you can learn about Lori and all the great things she enjoyed do along with office staff. But then if you want to get access to permits and other things, here's all your fee schedules. You can get access to any of the applications so that everything's in a one-stop shop. I can learn about what I need to fill out, who I need to talk to if I have questions, so on and so forth. So we're still working on it, but I think the site's looking nice. And we're trying to, one of the biggest challenges is figuring out how to best organize things. Site mapping, right? If anybody is familiar with site mapping, figuring out where things live on the site and how to reference back and forth between it has been quite the exercise. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you guys want to look at other pages, we can shoot over.
Looks awesome. Really, really updated.
Just have
Yeah.
one question. Ordinances,
Yes.
are they going to be out there now, soon?
So, yep. So if you go into government, you can go right over to municipal ordinances. And so all of our municipal ordinances, this took a little bit of doing, but every municipal ordinance has been entered by the different divisions. They call them titles, not chapters within the ordinances. So you can check it out by titles. And then if you want the full ordinance, you can come here. I did have a thought to go in and add specific ordinances that are of high interest to community members, ATV, UTV ordinances. And on certain pages, I did add them. So on the chief of police's page, which, or the police department's page, he had requested that I had the golf cart ordinance and the ATV ordinance specifically on their page because that's a frequently referenced item. We can do things like that. The long-term solution is eventually this whole page will just be a link, either a link to MuniCode or be embedded with MuniCode or something similar where they essentially host our ordinances and provide a much more dynamic way of searching through them. Similar to what you would find kind of with the state statutes, if you've ever had the fun of exploring state statutes. Really, all this is, these are at the end of the day still PDFs, which are cumbersome to navigate. There's certain tricks you can make to it, but at least it separates it into a way that's maybe a little easier to walk through. And it looks nicer.
Oh, it's
So,
great.
at least if it's still at its core kind of not helpful, or I shouldn't say not in the most efficient and helpful form, at least it looks a little better.
Is it paginated?
To a degree.
This is a question maybe for down the road, but who's going to be doing updates and how do we get stuff on it that we may want on it for the different commissions or?
Sure, that's a great question. So we have given access to 3 people right now. We will eventually roll it out to some of the other department heads as contributors to it, but administrative rights will probably be a much smaller group. And so empowering people to be able to create on their portion of the website as they see fit. So it'll be sort of a group effort, and everybody's going to have different levels of comfort and things like that. So department heads is the short answer to that, of who will be adding. If you want stuff added, we'll certainly, similar to what you're already doing, if it's a public works related matter, you would work through Sarah. If it's a library, well, library doesn't count because it's a different website, but if it's a city hall related matter, it would come through me, right? So it just depends on where it lives on the website, but we can help funnel that depending on who your question is. Okay, good questions.
Just comments that it looks so much more welcoming than what previous experience. Not that I had a lot, but it looks great. Appreciate the effort.
Just a question about the calendar.
Mhm.
How far in advance do things, is it just by because can you look at March and find meetings for March, or is it only the current month that we're in?
Yeah, it's a good question, Steve. So you can go as far forward in the calendar as you want. It just depends how, of course, what have we added?
Right.
We have a cadence to our meetings, but the only one that's really written in stone in terms of the exact date and time is council. Everything else is fluid, either in what week it happens on or what time it happens. So even finance, we know it happens right before council, but does it start at 6? Does it start at 6:15? right? So rather than add those ahead of time and then have to backtrack and change them and things like that, the only ones that are on there perpetually are the council meetings.
Right. I guess, I don't know if we need to just describe that, like, this is populated based on, because I think some people look at the calendar and like, there's no meetings ever on there. And it's like, well, if you look a month in advance,
Right.
there's not gonna be. You know what I mean? I don't know if people understand that agendas don't get set that far in advance.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where I know people have commented to me like, you don't ever have any meetings on, and I'm like, well, we do.
Yeah, it's certainly something I've thought about, Stephen. And again, I think that's part of the reason why I added the common council far enough out is because I know those are going to happen
Sure.
more often than not. I could certainly try that by generally saying like, hey, this is tentatively scheduled so that people would know the first and third Tuesday of the month, generally at 5 o'clock is when Public Works happens, but
Basically, I was just
yeah.
trying to save you a headache, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody, I mean, this is January so far, and so this feels good when people look at January, they're like, okay, there's stuff happening, right? There's no less than, almost 12 meetings on this calendar for this month, and there's still the second, you still have finance and public safety is not on there. And so I think it does look full when you're starting the month, but yes, if you go into February, like, yeah, that looks a lot more smaller, right? It just looks more vacant.
And another question, is there any areas where you see it, the site is deficient, like it doesn't do something we want it to do, or is it do pretty much everything we want it to do?
Do you want to take this?
I mean, my only thought is it's probably not going to be 100% on Thursday, but I think Nate alluded to 85%. It's just going to take time to build content. We're starting from scratch in some areas, and I've been working on the fire department page. And so I was just telling Chad, we need to build content. There's stuff there, but we can take it so much further. It's just we never had that opportunity with the old website. So I think we'll see more development as the weeks and months progress. If that makes sense, Steve.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
So just in terms of like the actual system itself, I think that might have been where your question was going, like revise as a content management system. Is there any problems with it or is there anything? Adding pictures is not fun. Adding pictures is very complicated, mostly because they force you in like, hey, this is the size of the photo that has to be up here. This is the size of the photo we can do here. And they really try to keep file size down. Otherwise, your website just bogs. And that their mechanisms for making that happen are incredibly frustrating. And that's a conversation I will have with them. It's like, the website's working, but you have to fix this because this is not user-friendly at all. And that's where, unfortunately, I've spent more time than I wanted to. And that hasn't been the majority of time, but it has, what should be a 2-minute thing turns into a 10-minute thing. And that's really frustrating. The other thing is that their actual formatting software for how content shows up on a page is finicky. And so it's not it's a frustrating system, but the outcome of it is like, okay, if I can generally get it to work and it looks nice, then I can live with it. And some of it's hard to know because granted, I've been in it for a while. It's like we haven't really done any of the tutorials as much as maybe we should. We went through hours and hours of training, but there's a lot of educational software in the back that we just haven't gotten into because we've just been about doing rather than learning and then doing. So it's not perfect by any means. If somebody comes and calls me and says, hey, what do you think of Revise? I'm like, well, let me tell you 2 things. Are you prepared to be frustrated a little bit? And are you prepared to not get your pictures to load? And if you can live with that, then the site looks nice.
With my experience, I think that's just websites in general. So you're par for the course.
Right.
But I guess I want everybody to hear that so that we don't like, I guess, yeah, go after our department heads and be like, hey, you need to do this, this, and this, because it does take time and it is frustrating. I guess I wanted the council to know that at least. So
I would say be gentle on department
Yeah,
heads.
exactly.
It's a steep learning curve. Nate and I understand we learn differently, and the trainings have been challenging, at least for me.
But yeah, I mean, we're what I told the department heads, and is that, hey, let's get it launchable. Let's make sure we're putting something out there that you're not embarrassed by. And let's certainly make sure we're not putting something out there that's going to cause you more work because there's incorrect information or all of a sudden a form you didn't want out there is out there, stuff like that. But in terms of like what your long-term vision is for your site, it's just that, a long-term vision. It's not going to be here day one. We'll slowly build into it, right? Like, I'm sure we all have dreams about like, oh, we should have a page for this and a page for that. Like, yes. And we'll get there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Trina and Nate have done so much on this project. It's really great. And then the department heads have all been working, trying to squeeze in the middle of everything else that everybody's trying to do, how to get it up and running. So I just want to thank everybody for all the work you've put in on this. It's very, very good. So yeah. If nobody else has anything, we'll move on down to the next agenda item.
Thanks,
Are you
Trina.
good, Nate?
Yeah.
Okay. Item number 16 is discussion with possible actions on MCS Networks contract for managed IT services.
So this conversation was brought up back in December, the first meeting in December. We introduced the contract, how we were going to approach it, but what we were missing was what the actual numbers were going to be. On the 12th, so I think within 4 days of our first meeting, Mike came on site. Maybe it was 2 days actually, and did an audit in every department except for the library, because the library has IT services through just a different system. And since that point, Mike and I have been working on the contract, working with George. Mike's been working with his lawyer just to make sure we're in a good spot. What I sent you out late last night was pretty close to the version that I'm going to share right now. And I'm just going to essentially share two broad documents. One is the IT service form, and that will be on the screen here in a second. So we looked at this back in December, but essentially what it puts together is a 3-year contract for services with MCS Networks, which gives us access to discounts on our annual service. So they're basically saying we're going to charge you once a year for all these services, which I'll outline in another spreadsheet, and you'll pay us. And because you're doing it that way, we'll offer 10% discounts on anything that we directly charge out. They can't offer discounts on things that they buy on our behalf, like security suites and different software that they have to have because they're paying full price for it. But any of the gold packages, platinum packages, they'll make available to us at a discount. We have the ability to exit only if they're not meeting expectations, right? And we'll get into that. So what has been added here that wasn't on the one you received last night, and again, I don't know, everybody hasn't received last night, and so we'll just kind of walk through this a little slower, is Exhibit A is just all the services. And those services are summarized here in the spreadsheet. These are all the things we are receiving per department. And so devices that are unprotected and unserviced will receive that. They'll receive security suites, backups, and then they'll, like, if there's a problem with it, it's not, hey Nate, can you come take a look at my computer? It's like, we put in a ticket and Mike takes care of it. He can remote in. If it's really broken, we can get it to him, or he can come down and deal with it. But these are all the services, and as you can see, it's a lot of PC support, server support, network management, all the things that we're just kind of doing without right now and hoping things don't break. If a network needs reconfiguration for some reason, a firewall port open, I don't know how to do any of that. And that's why we're paying for network management. If there's any security lapses, like, hey, none of your places have firewalls. Do you know that? Okay, should we? Right? Things like that, like basic stuff, and who's managing the firewalls and all that stuff. So this is just a run through of what we've identified in over months of conversation with Mike about what we need. I've challenged him. I said, do we really need this? Do we really need that? And then very quickly in that conversation, I realized I don't know what I'm talking about and that he's probably right. And he explains it in such a way that it becomes very obvious that that's probably not a place where we want to get cheap. So these are the services that are all packaged together. They're all separated in terms of 6 or 7 different exhibit A's, but this is just the summary of those exhibits.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Cindy.
Were you going to talk about the 3 columns? I wasn't sure what the budget.
Oh, sure. So, yeah, good question. So when we did the budget, it was based off our best approximation of what the numbers were going to end up being, how many PCs we had, servers, what kinds of packages we were going to need, but it was all done pre-audit. So before he came on site, we had to get something in the budget to cover it. And so essentially the first column for each department shows that the number count we did for the budget and what that cost was going to be. And then after the audit, what the number count was going to be, and therefore how the budget changed. And this is just a variation. Number counts went up in some ways, down in other ways, and then our cost went up. Again, remember how I do things kind of wacky. This is an increase in expense because we went from a lower PC support to a gold level support, because upon coming on site, he's like, no, we actually can't do that on that. And part of it is because he explains that if you do only a bronze PC, it's like the bare minimum. And if there's problems with it, or you know you're going to need work done, then I'm going to charge you time and labor to deal with it, because you're only getting the bronze support. But if you go gold support, all that stuff's wrapping in, it's going to be a heck of a lot cheaper with you. So if we know there's going to be a problem with that PC, which I can see, then go with the cheaper option of gold support. And him and I are conceiving plans on how we handle our fleet of IT equipment, right? So we have a fleet of IT equipment that's never been properly managed. We buy things as we need it. We have no idea how many devices we have or a good record of where they're at. And that's part of what he's helping me with. And if we find we have an overabundance of equipment, well, then we try to work to decommission things so that we're not overpaying for service on equipment that we really don't need that many of, right? But again, that will be not just a me decision, a conversation with the department heads and, if we need to, committees.
So the platinum ones, that was the police department. Then I see them.
Yeah. So the police department has the most equipment. It also has the most needs based on the type of work that they do. They have something called CJIS requirements, which are some high level requirements passed down from the Department of Justice. And so part of the reason where we're really excited to have Mike is he's very familiar with those CJIS requirements and knows exactly what the standards are that we have to meet, which is why you see a heck of a lot more things like all this NAS, DC hosting, firewall port lease, the Duo Essentials. A lot of these things are because it's just, we're dealing with some very, I don't know, sensitive information, Rick. And also the police department, along with the fire department, has the highest level of need for things to work right there and then. Right. And so they have higher level packages because a squad car computer goes down or something like that. That's potentially a problem. John's looking at me and saying, we didn't have squad computers when I was a police officer, and it worked out just fine, but right. John had a hunch, right? Everybody back then had hunches. No, I'm teasing John. So that's generally where we've landed. The cost overall, you can see the cost is more. I've had conversation with Cheryl to talk to her about the utilities, and I think she recognizes, again, we're going to try to gear down on some equipment that might be unnecessary or ready to be phased out. But the way I spoke to the department heads is like, this is going to be a hit to your budget, but because our plan was already always to come into 2025 and do a budget amendment based on the outcome of the opt-out agreement for health insurance, that we can consider that along with any other changes we want to make to the budget here within the first quarter. And again, I would suspect at this point for roughly $3,000 to the general fund, I think we need to move forward with that cost for now. And some of these devices will fall off after 6 months if we do things correctly. Not a lot, certainly not the majority, but the difference between 4 or 5 computers monthly makes a big difference. So we will try to be as economical as possible. Any more questions on this particular item? And again, in some of the departments, we just found more equipment, I guess, the way he said, and I tried to do my best talking to the department heads, but somebody with an eye for it ends up saying like, well, what about that over there? And what you have that? He's like, oh yeah, that's right. And I don't know what Chad's story was on that, but I think he found like 2 or 3 more devices in there that maybe we didn't have in our initial count, right? Yes. Yeah. He's very blunt about some changes he would recommend, which is good. And that's why we need him. Okay. So with that, the last thing I will bring up is the FAQ, which, all that information on there is great, gold package, platinum package, but what does it mean? And so I had showed this to you last time, which is basically the explanation of what is a silver support, gold support versus platinum. Sort of generally has the what's included within that, when is his response times, when he can deal with it. Again, the difference between gold support is, hey, unlimited in-lab diagnostics and repair 8:30 to 5, so normal business hours. But if you get the platinum, then we're getting after it because it's a critical device, right? And so that's part of what we're playing. And then it just goes into all the detail about like, what does network management include? This is the specific one for the police department, right? So it gets into all of that. And really what that is, it's important for the contract because we really need to know what we're getting. We're locking into you for 3 years. We're paying this much annually. We need to make sure what your service standards are so that if you're not meeting them, we can call you to the floor on them, right? So, and I'm not going to go through everyone, but that's essentially what it's getting at. And so those 3 documents, the Exhibit A's, this is Exhibit B, which explains what Exhibit A is a little bit more thoroughly. And then the support contract are sort of the documents that all work together to sort of create the contract and the plan. And so I don't know if we need to go through any of this again. I know it's been about a month, and with the holidays in there, we may have lost some things. George did look at this. He had some concerns about some of the liability language in the back end that he worked with their lawyer on figuring out and finding something reasonable. So I don't think he has any concerns anymore. He has not seen this final version with the 2 tweaks that have been made. So if you do feel compelled to approve this, or do so contingent on his final review. But to me, my recommendation would be that we move forward with this contract along with Exhibit A and B as shown, so that we can really allow him to get started, because he's been trying to help on the side. I shouldn't say on the side, with side agreements on some very potentially imminent issues we would have had. So we appreciate it from them, because he's like, we can deal with that in a second, but we got to deal with that right now. So and again, as he explains it to us, it's like, oh yeah, it's a good thing you saw. And so we're sorting through things.
Just, I guess, a point of clarification. Is it a one-man team, or does he have a team of people?
He's got a group of individuals that work for him. He's right now our point person on it, but he does. In my 2 or 3 months of working with him, he is very available. And so I don't necessarily have a concern with response times. And if he says he's going to do it, then that's his response time, then that's what he has to do.
Right. I guess I was like, depending on, like, if he's on our gold level problem and somebody has a platinum level problem, does he leave our gold level problem to go to their platinum level problem, I guess is.
Right. I mean, in some ways, he's going to have to triage things himself as they come in. And that's part of what it is. He's like, if I have to, do things that way, but as long as he's within you get your response within the normal response time.
Right.
You may not get it within the first hour that you want it, but as long as it's within contract, then it's fine. So
I've met 4 employees that are not Mike. So I can
I guess
say
that's
that
what
there's a fact
There's more
5
than one
people that
person.
can come on site that I've met.
Right on. That's what I wanted to know.
Other questions? None. I think we're looking for a motion to approve the network or the contract.
This is John, I'd move that we approve the contract.
This is Crystal. I'll second.
All right, got a-
Yeah, final review.
Yes, contingent on final review by George.
that. All right. Got a motion, a second. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Seth,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Todd,
Aye.
Emma,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
and Steve.
Aye.
All right. Item number 17. Discussion with possible action on CDI grant agreement.
Cindy, you want to open this up? I just did a bunch of talking. I can pick up wherever you want to stop.
Yeah, this is just the CDI grant agreement between WEDC for the renovation of the WPA bathhouse into the local welcome center. $250,000 matching grant. So we just have to do the dots and dashes and all that kind of stuff, and we're very excited.
So we had, Cindy and I had met with Mark Tallman from WEDC. We walked through this grant agreement. And then Lori and I met after, Lori's over there. I don't know why you would be,
You know, Lori.
well, you were walking around for a while, so yeah. So, and Lori and I had met as well, just to make sure all the requirements of the grant were doable for us from monitoring and reporting. And we feel very confident that it's all very doable. I asked Mark about timing of, hey, we signed this grant agreement. We still don't know where we're still not fully greenlit, right? We're moving towards authorization to bid on the project. And then obviously the bid window takes some time to be out there, about a month. We get bids back, we come back here with the bid tabulations, and then we decide, can we pull the trigger or not? And I said, well, what happens if, the moon falls and all of a sudden we can't pull the trigger for whatever reason? And basically said, yep, go ahead. There's no reason you shouldn't sign this agreement. You want to secure the funds because right now they're allocated to you, but we haven't cemented them to you, or basically said, nope, they are yours and nobody else can get after them. So he's like, you need to sign this contract as soon as possible. But if something happens and the project falls through, you don't get any black marks, red marks, any marks, ill will, whatever it may be, because we have to basically say, sorry, but this happened. I'm not saying it will. It's just when we talk about the what ifs of the world, I don't think there's any downside to signing at this point. And essentially what it's doing is saying, yes, we accept the funds, but we're not going to get hit over the head with any penalties if we accept it and then have to back out. So George did review this as well. Didn't feel like there was anything in there that was overly concerning. In fact, he felt better about us signing it this time because we're in the driver's seat the entire way through, where previously when we've signed this agreement, say when we worked with a third party like the Fortney, we were relying on them for a lot of stuff. And he says, well, are we going to get in trouble because they don't do something? And there's other mechanisms to take care of that. But for this, it's much more simpler because, again, we're in the driver's seat the whole way. So, again, I would recommend you move forward with approving signature of this agreement.
Thanks, Nate. Any questions?
This is Steve. I make a motion. We, sign the CDI grant agreement.
Todd will second it.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. You want to do a roll call?
Lori, just an FYI, we do have the updated agreement that has Justin there instead of me. It must just not made it in the packet.
It's
Okay.
here.
Okay. I just want to make sure you got the updated one.
Do a roll call?
Andrew,
Aye.
Todd,
Aye.
Emma,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
and Seth.
Aye.
All right. Item 18, discussion with possible action regarding MOU governing shift selection process for the Roca Police Association.
Okay, I think I'll let the chief sort of kick this one off and sort of explain it.
Yeah, so this is just a shift preference. So the current model that we have right now is the members, the patrol that are in the union, they get to pick their shift preferences twice a year. So it'll be January 1st and July 1st. So they came to me and inquired about, instead of doing it twice, let's just do it one time. So they would be ultimately be on the same shift the entire year, and then it would open up in January again. I brought it to the association, sent the letter to Nate and I, and then the mayor. We looked it all over. There is no financial implications with this. Realistically, their biggest one is just daycare. So how shift preferences kind of work, it goes by seniority. So ultimately, let's just say, for example, for putting names to faces, as Robert Roche and Jeff Walburn started on the same day 12 years ago, 14 years ago. And then the brand new officer, so they could bump somebody come July 1st, and then all of a sudden, oh, I got to change my whole daycare. So they really wanted it set for the whole year. So again, it just takes away twice financially, no implications, like I said. And then the ultimate one is even for scheduling purposes. I kind of love it. So, so admin wise, they are happy, we're happy. I don't see any negative to this, to be honest with you.
Questions? Thanks, Rick. So we need a motion to approve.
John, I'd move approval of the new MOU.
Cindy, I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Item number 19, payment of the bills.
These were all approved. This has got 2024 and 2025 in them. I won't go through them. I did that in depth in finance, but if anybody has questions on anything, I can help you out on those.
I was curious about the social media archiving subscription.
Yeah, so by virtue of being a public entity, we have requirements for storing and backing up our anything on our social media feeds. So if anybody comes on the City of Viroqua page, starts making comments, that now becomes public record. And if somebody were to issue a records request, we would have to produce that. But Facebook or any of the other ones, they don't do it automatically. So this social archive group comes in and basically captures anything that happens on our public platforms. So that way we can maintain public information, rules and laws, and deliver things as we see fit. Rick was the individual sort of brought it forward and said, yeah, we really need to do this. I think the police department is, certainly that's a more salient topic in theirs, but it can, it's basically City Hall, police department, fire, library, and Gale at Park and Rec, who all have social media accounts. And so we sort of divvy up the annual cost between the five.
This is something new.
We did it last year.
Oh,
And is this the third year we've done it? Yeah, it's just, this is the first year where we've broken it up across 5 departments. I think last year was broken up across 2 departments. And again, it's just, I think we've had, it's been more on our radar when it came to the budgeting cycle to just get it divvied up properly. Is the
does
best.
the library have something like that?
Yeah,
Oh.
so the library is one of the 5
Oh, is what,
departments.
it was in there, wasn't it? Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
The only other thing I'll note, we talked about this at, help me with the page number, Lori, for the boilers.
I think that was in the additional bills in the 2024 on page 2,
Yeah.
33,500.
So, yeah, library boiler system. I'm going to try to give the quick summary. It was discussed at public or finance personnel just before Christmas. There was a smell in the library. Sarah and Tyrell were brought in along with Chad, MG&E, along with H&N, who's our contractor for HVAC generally. And over the course of a few days, it was identified that both boilers had significant issues and were leaking hazardous gas into the building and had to be shut down. And so Trina went through a process of keeping the building on essentially life support by opening the doors and borrowing some heat from the link and turning on the fireplace and things like that. Fortunately, it wasn't as cold then as it is now. And Sarah and Tyrell worked very quickly and steadfastly with H&N to source 2 new boilers. And Sarah and Tyrell both looked at it and looked at options, and essentially, rather than spending money in cleaning and labor, especially on units of that age already, it would have just made sense to replace them. And so contacted the mayor and Crystal per the procurement policy as an emergency purchase because the building needed heat. And we're able to get approval on that, make the purchase. And we got the boilers installed the Friday before Christmas, was it? So within approximately 4 days or less of when the issue arrived. So not fun, not something we wanted to do. It was noted that, the life expectancy on something like that without proper maintenance isn't uncommon. For those of you who recall the glycol issue and some of the other HVAC issues, it was noted to me that those were completely separate issues and that this isn't a sort of systemic thing that's related to that. This is just a matter of the city needing to be more diligent about its preventative maintenance on its devices. And so Sarah and Tyrell have been working well with H&N on getting annual maintenance contracts set up and making sure that we're catching all of this in a more timely fashion, and that we're extending the life of these units as far as possible, and then certainly catching them in a way so that we can plan for them from both an operational standpoint and a financial standpoint, and certainly not let it get to the point where it becomes an emergency like it did.
I think that Trina and the library staff are owed a lot of, or debt of gratitude for all the extra work they had to do. She said that the room was where all the books go when you put them in the slots. It was just full because they were closed for a few days, and they had to keep the birds alive too, And so I give you a lot of credit for all the work you guys did, especially Trina. Yes. She was very happy camper when that was fixed.
So again, I don't mean to rehash everything we did at Personnel and Finance, but it is a large dollar amount. And as council goes to approve it, I think it's important that you kind of know the full backstory behind that particular item.
Thanks, Nate. Any other questions? No, we're looking for a motion.
I may make a motion, we pay the bills.
Steve, I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Todd,
Aye.
Emma,
Hi.
Cindy,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
and Andrew.
Aye.
All right, with that, second period for public comment. Nobody left here. Is there anybody online that would like to make a public comment?
We have a few folks, Mayor, but it looks like none of them are interested at this point, so I think you're good.
Sounds good. With that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
This Todd will make a motion to adjourn.
Steve, I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed?
Can't.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Nate.